Hello. So, if you are seeing this video, hi. It means that my plan to do a brew ships from my hotel room failed. Sorry. However, what should I do as a cover? What would be a good cover video? What would not take so much time that I wouldn't get it done with all the other stuff I had going on this week, versus what would be something fun for you all to watch and you all to enjoy, and would spark a load of questions and discussions. And people keep asking me to talk about science fiction admirals and science fiction leadership. And I'm going to do proper videos about them as the time goes on, but I thought I would highlight some of the things that really annoy me about some Star Trek command scenarios, okay? Just some things which really don't make sense in Star Trek. And the reason I picked Star Trek is because it's a nice long-running series, and it's going to sound strange. There's lots of examples for me to draw from. I'm going to pick just the two which involve Sisko and Picard mainly, because... how do I put this politely? Those two had the most running with Admirals. Janeway was lucky. Janeway had an entire different quadrant. Admirals were causing her trouble, but they were trouble at a distance. She could ignore them. Janeway had advantages here. And I'm not getting into the whole Discovery Admirals. They're just... And don't get me started on the Archer and dealing with Admirals. It's... every time Starfleet gets to above the level of ship command, they go nuts. They really do. They go absolutely insane. They have all sorts of issues, and I don't know why. I just don't know why. It's just absurd, really. It's a constant thing of why? Why are you doing this? Why are you being like that? Why do you not think it through sensibly? And someday they might. But it's doubtful. It's doubtful. But anyway, on to the first of the situations which really do make me rant. And there might be a palate cleanser halfway through a situation which I actually like. There might be a palate cleanser halfway through of something I actually like. So let's watch this, shall we? This always interests me, this one. It really does interest me.
See me?
Sisko being Project Adjutant.
Captain Bennett's promotion has come through. At my recommendation, Starfleet's putting her in charge of 7th Tactical Wing. He's one of the best adjutants I've ever had. A strong grasp of strategy and ability to see the big picture.
Sounds like it's not going to be easy to find someone to take her place.
I already have. You.
Sir?
I've been very impressed with you over these past few weeks. I think we would make a good team.
Thank you, sir.
So, already I'm getting the idea here that the adjutant is theoretically what in normal naval parlance, modern warfare parlance, would be Chief of Intelligence, Chief of Operations, 2IC, in effect, to the Admiral as their sounding board. Okay, this is a Space Force, but that's a lot to put on someone. Also, I'm hoping that promotion, if they're going to command a tactical wing, means they're now at least a Commodore. But you never know with Starfleet, because they like to use captains to command fleets all the time. And then suddenly an admiral turn up, and you're sort of going, well, an admiral's supposed to be commanding a fleet. So, because they have a staff to do that, because that's what you need to command and coordinate a fleet. You need a staff, you need a senior engineer, you need an intelligence officer, you need all this team around you to support it. All these people. Well, there again, my biggest complaint usually about Starfleet is they don't have those people. They don't do that. Just wait till we get to one at the end. I'll be ranting like that for about 10 minutes. But leaving that to one side, adjutant sounds interesting. It's not adjutant in the traditional sense It's adjutant in a Starfleet sense.
Your new assignment is effective immediately.
Immediately, sir. What about the Argolis mission?
Commander Dax will captain the Defiant. She is up to it, isn't she?
Oh, absolutely, sir. I guess I'd just gotten used to the idea of commanding the mission myself.
Really? You've got a vital mission coming up, a really critical mission, and your response is, I need a new adjutant, so I'm going to remove you from that. That role must be as critical as I was saying, because otherwise there is no justification to remove an experienced captain who's been prepping from the mission they're supposed to be going on. They've been prepping, planning, going to lead a mission, and now you're dropping that on someone else. And they've got to go off and do it immediately. Look, I know they get time in space flight, in space travel, to actually be able to go and read over the reports and work things out, but you have literally said you've taken and you've had someone planning, going to lead an operation, and now you're taking off them? Again, it's not without precedence in armed forces, but I would have just hoped by the time we get to this period, we'd have actually started growing out of making such silly mistakes.
Look over these tactical reports. I want your thoughts on the Bolian operation. We'll meet here at 0600.
Adjutant, intelligence officer, going and providing these things, and operations officer apparently, and probably logistics officer as well, knowing Starfleet. Everything in one. Why have a team of staff? Why be sensible and have an actual or decent organization? No, we can't do that.
Ben? Congratulations.
And the thing is, he's a captain. So you've just taken away his command. Yes, you promoted him to adjutant, he's adjutant, but that's not an increase in rank. It's the Federation side, it's not an increase in pay either. It's an increase in prominence, but you've taken away his ship. You've taken away his independent command. If I give you an example, in the army, that's like when they take you away from your company and they give you a battalion. Oh, a battalion executive officer position. You're a major. Oh, great. I've lost my company. Now I have to deal with 15 times the amount of paperwork. Congratulations? I think not. It's the same in this scenario. You've taken away his ship, and you've given a whole boost of paperwork. That's not congratulations. That's, I'm sorry, but you're the only one who'll do. Or, I'll treat you to a vast quantity of alcohol if you drink it, or iron brew in the case of me. There are many options, but not congratulations. You've got a mountain of paperwork heading towards you. That's not something to congratulate someone on. No one is excited for paperwork. But you know what? It gets worse. It does. Because as we go on with these commands, you get to this scene.
You've left it a very tempting target.
Earth will still be defended by the Third Fleet.
But what if you're wrong, and the Dominion doesn't commit its forces to protect Deep Space Nine? What if instead they launch...
How is this man made Admiral? How is this man made Admiral with no grasp of logistics or movement or anything? Earth is the center point of the galaxy, but if we're attacking their one and only supply route, they might still come and attack Earth, despite the fact that by the time they've attacked Earth, we will control their only supply and logistics route, so anything they've used to attack it will be lost forever, won't get any resupply, and we'll have secured the quadrant. No! Earth!
a full-scale assault on Earth. If we follow the plan you're proposing, we'll never be able to get reinforcements there in time.
The Dominion won't attack Earth.
How can you be sure?
Because Earth isn't the key to the Alpha Quadrant. The wormhole is.
And here's the captain to tell all these admirals who are supposed to be promoted because they've been experienced captains, have knowledge, understanding, have been promoted to a strategic leadership role. And here's the captain having to break it down in simple, bite-sized chunks. And I realise this is partially done for the audience. But it feels to me like you're treating the audience like they're stupid. And you're using the Admirals to portray it as stupid. It would be a briefing if there were captains in the room and junior officers, yes, and you were conducting a general briefing and explaining to them. That I could understand these questions, these answers. These are supposed to be admirals.
And whoever controls Deep Space Nine controls the wormhole. Gentlemen, this mission cannot succeed without...
And what is best is to reiterate this, they then have another scene straight after it with the Klingons.
The involvement of the Klingon Defense Forces.
We agree with you, Captain. Chancellor Gowron does not.
Then you will have to change his mind.
Again, though, thankfully, this time, now they're blaming the politicians. It's Chancellor Gowron's fault.
The Chancellor is reluctant to commit such a large fleet to a single engagement.
He believes it would leave the Empire vulnerable.
Starfleet Command had the same concerns about Earth, but after careful consideration, they decided it was worth the risk.
Now, I realize Starfleet Command being very Earth-centric is one of the ongoing themes of Star Trek, and I do realize that's an issue. But these are the Klingons. They live for war. They live for glory of battle. And you're telling me someone's worried? Well, you know, instead of taking part in this massive, glorious battle where we could wrest control of DS9 and therefore stop them, being able to stop the Dominion being able to resupply from their quadrant into our quadrant via the wormhole. I know, it's all Star Trek stuff, don't worry. It's basically, just imagine that there is a single supply line, a single railway, or a single railway or major port, and if you control it, you control access, and you can block the enemy from resupplying. It's that principle. So if we take that, then the forces that are here will wither on the vine because then they have no refreshment, no sustainment, and we'll just be able to take them down at our leisure. We'll be able to withdraw, increase our forces. We'll be able to develop and strengthen ourselves. They won't. But no. We're worried they might attack us. What's happened to the Klingons? And this was years ago. What happened to the Klingons? They got their ridges back, but they lost their aggression. Were they actually not that aggressive a race? Was it really the frustration of losing their ridges that made them quite so aggressive and warlike? You don't know, but this feels so weak.
General, perhaps you should return to Kronos and make your plea in person. The Chancellor has great respect for you. If you cannot persuade him, no one can.
I will go to see Gowron, and you will come with me.
No. The Chancellor no longer considers me a friend.
I know. But what could be better? An ally and an enemy both telling him the same thing. He'll have no other choice but to agree.
Now that's the Klingon! That is the Klingon line! That is what I expect from a Klingon. We will surround him with arguments from both allies and enemies, and we'll crush him in the middle. That is a Klingon. Being a Klingon. And, yeah. Martok, thank goodness you've just saved the entire line of senior officers in Star Trek for me. Now made them tolerable.
Gentlemen, I need those ships.
Surprise, surprise.
And you shall have them.
But here's the other thing. Yes, I know he has a good relationship, Sisko, with these officers. He has a good understanding of them. But the question surely comes, this is a high-level briefing between allies where there is the equivalent of an Admiral involved from Martok. And yet, Admiral Ross isn't there. The adjutant is giving it. See what I mean about the adjutant being second in command? If the adjutant was just an assistant, A, they wouldn't need to be so senior, and B, they wouldn't be doing briefings like this. And this is him filling the role of second in command, chief of staff, chief of operations. Just think about the sheer amount of paperwork that man is having to deal with. I know they're all on data pads, not paperwork as in traditional sense, but the thing is, He should be up to his eyeballs in data pads. I mean, the poor man should be crying. And where's his staff? Okay? If he's the adjutant and he's doing all these different jobs, he will need a fleet of staff with him. Where are his junior officers running around? His lieutenants, his ensigns, his assistants running around and reporting to him. He should have at least one senior NCO on his door organising the people coming in and saying no to the people who can't take up his time and who should basically be living with him. Admittedly, that would probably be in this particular franchise would have ended up being poor Chief O'Brien, adding onto even more tasks onto his job. But frankly, Chief O'Brien doesn't deserve that pain. Lead the man to engineering, let him be happy, and occasionally do a bit of fighting. That is, Chief O'Brien is happy. But seriously, again, I realise there are budget limitations, and so part of this is done through the scenario of how much it costs to pay for actors. But also, the people we're talking about don't need to be known stars. They can be quite young, so they could be pretty darn cheap. You're not going to tell me if all the other stuff Star Trek is spending money on, they couldn't afford to pay a little bit of money extra to have a young actor or actress getting their first break by being the assistant to the adjutant. By being the one who's his doorkeeper, his gatekeeper, making sure he's getting the people who need to see him, making sure the people who don't need to see him are kept as far away from his door as physically possible. There should certainly be ones for the Admirals, but they usually turn up solo. We'll not get into that. That's coming. It's just, yeah, this is not... And the fun thing is, for me especially, and sometimes I will end up having conversations with people at science fiction events and things which I sometimes go to. And they'll start, when I'm talking about navies, but why do they have all the staff? You don't need them. This. No, the reality is very different. And I have to spoil their entire view of this wonderful thing that these things work because of Star Trek and go, no. The reality is, Cisco, by this point, having been doing all these jobs with apparently no team around him, because we never see them, no work around supporting him, and just filling in orders, would literally be bleeding from his eyeballs in despair and frustration. The man would be a walking mess, rather than the god of war he has become at this point. Also, consider this fleet formation. I know, again, it's TV screens, but they're all in orbit around the station, apparently, which is it's fine. It's a holding pattern. It's perfectly sensible. But they seem to be orbiting as single ships rather than formations. And if you've got a fleet here, apparently a fleet forming up here, wouldn't they be in their squadrons, their tactical wings, their formations? Plus there's about 3 Galaxy class in front of us, which is already quite a scary formation, but there's also some of my favourites in there. And there aren't enough Defiants around. You would think by this point in the war there would be more of them. There should be probably more of them, but... You know, Defiant was both a rule of cool and a special ship and a general-purpose escort, apparently. They were turning something which was the space equivalent of the Flower class into the space equivalent of a Death Star.
Are you sure this is reliable?
I've known the courier for 5 years. I trust him.
Definitely your intelligence chief. Apparently, he has moved to adjutant, and he's now coordinating your intelligence. He's picked out his own couriers, who he knows, and his information is coming directly to him. Now, admittedly, there was already stuff going on when he was just the captain of a ship, but hey, that was weird. Having a captain who's wandering off doing missions, also acting as your intelligence, acting as one of your intelligence lines of communications, rather than handing it over to Starfleet Intelligence, which apparently exist in Starfleet. There are intelligence, we've seen them. We've seen intelligence officers, and yet there's not one here. They're discussing intelligence. They've apparently got the primary source has gone straight to the adjutant, and the Admiral's talking about it.
Then we have a problem. According to this, the minefield's coming down in 3 days. The Ninth Fleet won't be here for at least 4.
Then I suggest we go without them.
What about...
Where is the chief engineering officer to report upon the mechanical capability of the ships and all their viability? Where is the chief logistics officer to talk about the supplies of the ships? How many, what are ready? Probably you'd also want not just intelligence officer, you'd want your operations officer in there to talk about the readiness of the fleet in terms of their ability to actually fight. How many of what their command facilities? You'd also probably want someone who's senior in charge of personnel in there, because when you talk about fleet at this level, and this is Star Trek, how many ships are short of captains, officers, NCOs? What are the crew states like? You're in the middle of a war. You need someone accounting for these things. This is not a discussion just between two people, because they can't deal that volume of information. It's never been a discussion between just two people. The others are always in the room, maybe to answer questions, but they're in the room.
The Klingons.
Looks like we go without them, too. We've run out of time, Admiral.
If those Dominion reinforcements come through the wormhole, we'll have lost everything.
We take the ships we...
It's all amping up the stress, all amping up the pressure. But again, they've run out of time. They've got a certain number of days to get in there. Okay. Fine.
We have. Fight our way to Deep Space Nine and destroy the anti-graviton emitter. It's our only hope.
Do it.
Powerful acting. But here's the problem. This Admiral just said do it to his adjutant. It's your fleet, mate. Your fleet. Why is he going to do it? We should do it. You should be leading them. They're your fleet, not his fleet. He's your adjutant, not you. I know it's for Star Trek, I know it's the acting, I know it's... But, no! Just no! And now we've finished with Cisco. Oh, good lord. It's on to the Picard Admirals. Oh, wish me luck and bless my soul. This should really be said as Admiral comes out to visit ship in the middle of deep space and starts mucking around with the crew. But leave that to one side.
The Cardassian forces, which were recently withdrawn from the Bajoran sector, have been redeployed along the Federation border. They have
and this is not a briefing for any reason. This is an Admiral coming out and saying this in person to senior command. Why? Why would I? It's really weird. The Admiral's come out to do this in person. Yes, I know there's also the fact that Picard has gone off on a secret mission in this video, so he's not around, and the fleet flagship is being left under his command, or his second in command. That's kind of weird in its way as well. That's definitely something of Hollywood. In reality, if you've got captains of critical ships and you have secret missions come up, you go to your Special Forces Command. You go to a whole range of personnel before you go and say, you know what, I'm going to remove a captain from a ship in the middle of operations in a critical area and send him off to do it. Yeah.
mobilized 3 divisions of ground troops, and their subspace communications have been increased by 50%. We believe that they're preparing for an incursion into Federation space.
Are the Cardassians ready for a war?
I didn't say war, Commander. I said incursion.
Those things are... How'd I put it? Well, splitting hairs, let's be honest, because if they're doing an incursion, that's going to create a war.
Our intelligence reports suggest that they'll try to seize one of the disputed systems along the border. We think they're gambling that the Federation won't actually go to war over one system.
Will we?
I hope we won't need to make that decision.
Translation: we don't have a frigging clue. It's going to depend on the political clout of the system involved and how many people are interested in it.
We have decided to send the Enterprise to meet with the Cardassian representative in open talks.
You're sending a single ship. You're sending a flagship. Okay. The flagship that you took the captain off to go and do a special operation in Cardassia. Oh, now I see what's coming.
We're hoping that the presence of the Federation flagship on the border will send a message to their leadership about just how seriously we view the situation.
Where is Captain Picard?
The captain, your chief medical officer, and security chief have been reassigned.
Oh, that's sensible. You've taken 3 of the top senior officers, 2 of the other top senior officers, as well as the captain, off a ship, and now what are you going to do?
That's all I can tell you for now. Do any of you know Edward Jellicoe?
He is the commanding officer of the Cairo.
I've heard of him. I don't know that any of us have ever...
I'm giving him command of the Enterprise this afternoon.
Wow, that's sensible. So I've taken off the captain, I've taken off the... and the captain who handpicked this team. I've taken the security chief away, I've taken the medical officer away, and I'm going to parachute another captain in, and I'm going to send it on a high-pressure, high-risk mission, because this captain's a specialist in his capabilities. By the way, am I adding a member of the diplomatic team here? No, but there again, this is Starfleet. We have a diplomatic corps, but every time we want to do diplomacy, we're sending captains rather than diplomats.
Captain Jellicoe helped to negotiate the original armistice 2 years ago, and I believe he's the most qualified person to lead this mission. The change of command...
It's so nice that he was just hanging around doing nothing. Oh no, he was probably in command of the Cairo. So you're now disrupting 2 ships' chains of commands and organizations for this.
And will take place at 1300 hours. Thank you.
Admiral, with all due respect, it's not necessary to give Captain Jellicoe command of the Enterprise just to conduct a negotiation.
I disagree. The Enterprise will be in a dangerous situation, and I want someone on the bridge who has a great deal of experience with the Cardassians. No offense, Commander, but that's not you.
Okay. So this guy is qualified to be commander of one of the largest ships in your navy. He is qualified in the assessment of Starfleet that if anything happens to Captain Picard on a long distance mission, etc., thing, he will assume charge because you're not getting someone out to replace Picard then. He's qualified to do all sorts of operations for you. But on this occasion, you're not qualified for this. We're going to put a new... Now, I know it's a storyline thing. Partially. But it's also a problem. It truly is a problem. Because this is not how you handle these things. And a 3-star Admiral coming and handling in person... That's quite a big deal. And if she's so interested in the things, why is she not taking a ship there herself? Well, of course she can't do that. That would be silly to send her. But why are you sending, again, the fleet flagship on its own? If you want to impress the Cardassians, you don't send a single ship. Well, let me put it this way. You do send a single ship, perhaps. If you want to show you're completely unconcerned, you send a single ship which is very small. And you go, basically, oh, you're so important, you don't rate anything big. That's something to talk to you. It's a calculated insult, which they know is an insult, but they can't say anything about. It's standard naval diplomacy. It's put the person in their place diplomacy. Size of the ship percent doesn't matter. But if you want to overawe someone, the other option is you send 2 of your biggest ships or 3 of your biggest ships on a mission and you just go, well, it could be it's important, but also it's a case of, oh yes, we have so many of these ships, we can afford to waste 3 on a mission like this. Sending your fleet flagship on something which is not a straight-up normal negotiation, but is some sort of conflict management, risk deterrence, solo, and doing what they're doing to its command structure, is asking for disaster. It's asking for disaster. Ominous music notwithstanding. Oh, well, let's see. What's next in my list? Oh, good. I think it might be a palate cleanser. When it actually does right. And of course it's Admiral Janeway. Oh. So this is a palate cleanser.
Captain, you have an Alpha priority communication from Starfleet Command.
Acknowledged.
Admiral Janeway, how good to see you again.
Jean-Luc, how'd you like a trip to Romulus?
With or without the rest of the fleet?
A diplomatic mission. We've been in...
Honestly, with or without the rest of the fleet can work for a diplomatic mission as well. Honestly, it can, when you consider the relationships between the two. But once again, they're going to be sending off a solo ship. So once again, it's going to be annoying me for Star Trek. But actually listen to this briefing. A, it's not being done in person. She hasn't wasted a journey all the way out here to go, to do it, start issuing commands in person. She's actually doing it by communications, which is sensible. And she'll give pertinent information. It'll be amazing.
Invited, believe it or not. Seems there's been some kind of internal political shakeup. The new praetor, someone called Shinzon, has requested a Federation envoy.
New praetor?
If you're thinking, trap, 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 you don't need to watch the movie. It is a trap. It's quite a, well done one, but nicest way. No one is surprised. No one is surprised in this movie that that's a trap. Even if you had not watched anything about the movie, any of the promotional material at all, the moment this happens, you're going Star Trek. Trap!
There's more. He's Riemann. Believe me, we don't understand it either. You're the closest ship, so I want you to go and hear what he has to say. Get the lay of the land. If the Empire becomes unstable, it could mean trouble for the entire quadrant.
Understood.
We're sending you all the intelligence we have. But it's not much. I don't need to tell you to watch your back, Jean-Luc.
Hardly.
The Sona, the Borg, the Romulans. You seem to get all the easy assignments.
Now, the one thing I noticed was in a lot of discussions, there were a lot of people who felt this wasn't actually natural structure of how people would talk to each other in these command scenarios. Having spent the time I have interacting, especially with retired, I have to admit, but also with some serving senior officers, I can imagine this conversation completely. It's 2 senior officers joshing each other, as the phrase goes.
Just lucky, Admiral.
Let's hope that luck holds. Janeway out.
And that's the facial expression. But sadly enough, that palate cleanser of actually decent command structure, information coming later, this is me giving you a heads up what's coming, sort of thing, that still cannot overwhelm the fact that, once again, they're sending a single ship. Oh, for goodness sake. I would love to say that was my worst experience with Jean-Luc Picard, but it really isn't. It really is not my worst experience. The man gets around, and what can I say, he really gets up to some weird things, and gets himself into trouble far more often than I'd really like him to. In this case...
Been 3 major engagements in the past 2 weeks, all of them won by ships loyal to the Duras family.
Why is a captain of a starship giving an intelligence briefing to 2 senior admirals? There are no staff officers of which around, and where are their adjutants, who apparently, according to what happens with Cisco, are their literally God-given right hand? Where's Starfleet intelligence? And if Starfleet intelligence is giving the information to Picard, why are they not giving it to the Admirals? Why does he need to brief the Admirals on this? You can argue to make a case, but again, why have 2 Admirals come out to the middle of nowhere in space to see a ship's captain? To have a debate about this? Why? They're Admirals. They have fleets to command. They have all sorts of big operations and things to be doing. Why have they come out here just to listen to the fleet flagship captain give them an intelligence briefing they should be getting from their chiefs of staff and intelligence officers daily anyway? Why? What's happening in this organization? I realize that Starfleet is supposed to be not a military organization. They are a peacekeeping organization which can wage war, but they're a scientific exploration. But still, I have never met a scientific organization which is run this badly. I have seen ones which are university scientific organizations staffed by academics. They are lovely, but they do not understand hierarchy. And then wonder why things aren't working. It's just... Seriously. I work in universities, and none of them are quite this bad. I say that in the nicest possible way. What is going on here, Starfleet?
None of which is our concern, Jean-Luc.
It is your concern. The Federation and the Klingon Empire are allies. One of your allies is currently having a civil war. The faction winning that civil war is the one which is most anti the Federation. I should not have to explain this to you. Jean-Luc should not have to just explain this to you now. You should know it. You're an Admiral. Again, a 3-star, apparently, with 3 pips there. You're an Admiral, and not a junior one, a senior one. Why? Why is anyone having to explain this to you? You're supposed to be selected because you're the best and the brightest and the most capable to do the job. I realize that the best and brightest possibly don't want to give up their ships and like to be captains. But I'm presuming the ones who go on to become admirals in normal time when there isn't major wars are the ones who basically have decided they want to stay home for a bit. They want to have a bit of stability in life. They don't want to be jumping around the galaxy every 5 minutes. At least they'd probably be half decent, but no, we've got ones who appear to have never had a briefing in their life.
The Klingon Civil War is by definition an internal matter of the Empire.
Agreed. But if the Duras are being aided by the Romulans, it becomes very much our concern. The Romulans have been attempting to destroy the Klingon Federation alliance for the past 20 years. And at the same time, the Duras have been secretly conspiring with the Romulans. Doesn't it strike you as odd that the Duras are able to field such an overpowering force against Gowron that they outmatch him at almost every turn?
Again! This is all stuff she should know. All the Admirals should know. Please note, I'm not picking on this particular Admiral as a pure example. Shanafi is actually one of the better Admirals as a whole. But this scene just undermines all the other good stuff she does. Yes, it's bad writing, I've decided, on the part of Trek. But also, I think it's because Star Trek, fundamentally, the writers do not understand what their Admirals are supposed to be doing. I don't think anyone ever stood there with the writers behind Star Trek and went, this is what an Admiral does, this is what their staff does, this is what they'll be doing, this is what they'll be organising, this is how things will work. They just change their minds how it's going to work every 5 minutes. And again, where are their adjutants? In a nice way, having seen this in a relationship between Ross and Cisco, they should be attached at the hip.
Some would call it good leadership.
And some would say that they must be getting help. The Romulans are prepared to take enormous risks to gain any advantage over the Federation. Can we seriously believe that now, with the future of the Klingon Empire in the balance, they are content to stand by and watch?
And why is Riker standing there? Why is he posing? Standing behind his captain, looking adoringly at him? What is the purpose in the staff briefing of this man being here? If he's not giving more briefing, and why is he not sitting down? Why? You know, why? I can understand Picard's giving the briefing, walking around the room fine. Why is Riker standing? Pet peeve aside. Again, with all this stuff, there should be intelligence officers in there. There should be all sorts of people in there giving information. I'm not surprised Section 31 turns out to be such a shock to Starfleet when they hear about it, because probably Starfleet intelligence is a shock to them when they actually see them. They seem to never turn up for the briefings. It's random captains giving the briefings and talking about the stuff. Starfleet intelligence themselves never turn up. So a subsection of Starfleet intelligence, which is ultra secret, I'm surprised no one's heard of it. I'm surprised that there isn't a current ongoing joke. Oh, Starfleet intelligence? Anyone seen them? No. There is a theory, and it's a pretty good theory I've sometimes subscribed to, that Starfleet intelligence is actually staffed entirely by chief petty officers and sergeant majors. I'm talking warrant officer level personnel. As we all know, warrant officers are excellent at not being anywhere near when they're absolutely not needed, so they can't get tasked with extraneous things. If they're needed for something, they'll be there, they'll fix it, sort it. But if the moment they're no longer specifically needed, they'll disappear. They'll disappear and be gone. So I think Starfleet intelligence is where all the warrant officers of Starfleet are. Because that's what explains it. And I think personally they decided that seeing as them briefing these admirals isn't going ahead, they'll just leave it for some captains. They'll give them the information, tell them to do it, because the admirals obviously aren't listening to them. That's the other option. The Starfleet intelligence are so fed up with banging their heads against the wall that is trying to brief an admiral that they've given up. They're now just crying in a fetal position somewhere. Kind of like some of my computers are. They're just hiding from it. Because who would want to deal with them? Really, who would want to deal with them?
What is it you propose, Captain?
We must stop the flow of supplies and equipment to the Duras from the Romulans. What I propose is that we send a fleet to the Romulan-Klingon border.
Please note, he just said, we send a fleet. We send a fleet. He's a captain. Let's remind you that... Yes, it's the fleet flagship. So, yeah, you could say he probably, whilst he is a captain, he probably ranks in as equivalent to a commodore. He's slightly more senior. But he just said send a fleet. And Starfleet has a fleet structure. They have admirals, they have presumably adjutants, because they don't have staff. They have adjutants. So the adjutants don't even have staff. They're just magic and can deal with all the information without, again, being absolutely destroyed. But he said send a fleet, right?
We take no offensive action, but we will be in a position to expose any Romulan supplies that attempt to cross the border.
That fleet better be hundreds of ships, and I'm talking a huge, huge number of, fully crewed, capable vessels, right? And it's probably better you take one of the worked-up fleets that's already used to sort of working together, has similar protocols, has a well-established chain of command. This kind of operation where you want to go between two powers, one allied, one certainly not border, and basically set up almost a neutral zone there, to use Starfleet lexicon. You'd better be taking something which is a prepared organization, right? Something which can work together. And considering the size of Starfleet and the formations they have, you surely have something available.
A blockade.
Exactly.
But how will you overcome the Romulan cloaking device?
Okay, that's starting to worry me. That's already going into how will you. Okay. So if that's the case, and I presume it's going to be an engineering and scientific solution that's offered here, from memory it is, where are the engineering and science officers? Where are the people who came up with this? Because I'm presuming Picard didn't come up with himself, because Janeway could probably have come up with it by herself. Picard, he has skills, but I wouldn't say they're engineering or science necessarily.
My chief engineer has developed a system that should nullify...
So where is the chief engineer? You're briefing admirals. The first thing an admiral would ask at this point is, so, can they please explain the system to me? Not, you give me a précis of the system, I want to be able to ask questions. Before I send a fleet, I want to be able to ask questions. And by the way, here's my fleet engineering officer and my fleet science officer, and they're going to ask questions as well. Because they're my experts who ask questions on my behalf.
By that advantage. Each ship will send out an active tachyon beam to the other blockading ships. Now, in theory, any cloaked vessel that attempts to pass between our ships must cross that beam and be detected.
The fact that no one in this scene says the words tripwire really disturbed me. I have to admit, it really disturbed me. But we'll leave that to one side.
I'll have to clear this with the Federation Council. In the meantime, assemble your fleet, Captain.
Assemble your fleet, Captain. There are 2 admirals in this room. I take it one is senior to the other. There are 2 admirals in this room. Assemble your fleet, Captain? Assemble your fleet? Has Picard now got the staff to run a fleet? Or does he not need staff? Are we just adding the extra work onto the ship's crew already? As if the chief engineer of the ship doesn't have enough to do. As if Geordie LaForge doesn't have enough to do with his life. But don't worry, it's going to get worse. This whole blockade is probably the thing which winds me up the most when it comes to fleet command. Because, okay, in stuff, I'll get into it. We'll get into it as we go.
Nicely done. I hope we know it.
Just standing there so he can add in this bit, nicely done at the end. Why was he not sitting? Why?
We're doing.
So do I, number one.
It does just... And it carries on, this episode does. And I'm not going to go the whole way through this episode, because this episode I could go through the whole thing in terms of this video and absolutely crucify Star Trek, but it would just be gratuitous by the end of it. The whole blockade is terrible, but this just adds to it. Because, as I just said, where are all the staff coming from? It gets worse.
To data, will you select a group of experienced Enterprise officers to augment the crews of those ships? Aye, sir.
Because he has so many crew to go around not to support him in running a fleet. He's also sending personnel off to other ships, which are apparently shorter crew. So all those admirals who are running around unable to command and coordinate fleets are not also keeping those fleets fully crewed. Okay.
Will, I want you to command the Excalibur. Her crew was reassigned when she put in...
Okay, he's sending off his executive officer.
For repairs. Geordie, you will be his first officer. I see.
He's sending off his chief engineer as well. Okay, alright. So he's got a whole fleet which is full of ships which are in all sorts of issues. And he's taking his chief engineer, the engineering officer he has personal on his ship to advise him. The best engineer he has access to. And he's sending him off to another ship to be executive officer. This is why you have an admiral with a staff. So you don't do this. You don't do this. You at least have a commodore with a staff. You have some staff officers. You at least attach some extra officers for the job. Just, why? Why would you do this? Why?
I want the fleet underway by 0900 tomorrow. Thank you, gentlemen.
And it gets worse. Data is, of course, his third in command. Now, whilst he's very good, and I completely respect that, frankly, Data did deserve a command, and we'll talk about this, the point is, he's now losing his executive officer, his second in command, his third in command, and his chief engineering officer are all going off to different commands. And what's even funnier is Data is a lieutenant commander. He turns up to a ship which is under command of a lieutenant commander and takes command. Now, that's not completely without precedence, but it's also a little bit of why. And I know it's a plot device as well for the episode, and it's really nice because it shows Data's growth, but Data deserved command of a ship, definitely. But the thing is, that annoys me is, this means you are leaving Picard on his own to run his ship, and he's losing all his senior officers. And he's got to coordinate a fleet as well as doing this. And he sent away the person who's the expert in this tachyon system, his chief engineer, to be executive officer of another ship. The guy who came up with it. So the person who most understands what they're going to do on an engineering level is leaving the command ship, which is going to be coordinating it all. And now he's going to send away... It's just...
Yes, Mr. Data. May I ask a question, sir, of a personal nature?
Yes.
I am confused. Why have I not been assigned to command a ship in the fleet, sir?
Now, to this point, Picard should respond with this line. Because I'm just about to be in command of a multi-ship force, commanding a large number of ships, some of which are in such terrible condition, I just have to send away my executive officer and my chief engineer. At a certain point in this operation, I will need to sleep, I will need to defecate, and I will need to eat. Therefore, there needs to be someone else on this ship of senior enough rank to be in charge of this ship and coordinating these formations when I need to do those three things. What he actually does is he gives Data command of a ship. What he actually does is give Data command of a ship. And again, I want to say that I believe Data deserved command of a ship. I really do. But I also think it was fundamentally the most stupid thing in the world from a command perspective and a leadership perspective. And I realise a lot of these things, a lot of these decisions are plot devices. A lot of them are, we're doing this because it's going to give us a really cool story, and we're going to set up the antagonism between Data and other officers on the ships he takes over and all those things. And he doesn't give Data the benefit of taking an officer as second command or anything like that. No. He just parachutes them in. And it's basically it's a repeat with a better officer, I have to say, than the whole Jellicoe parachuted into Picard's position that we saw earlier. But seriously, this is not how you run a fleet. This is not how you run a force. And this is one of the reasons why I have to say I am, whilst I am looking forward to, and I'm going to do some science fiction leaders at certain points, there is part of me which isn't looking forward to it. There is part of me which is going to be spending most of my time explaining how what they're doing is the complete antithesis of sensible command. It looks cool. It sounds really great from a story perspective. And when I was a young kid watching this, I remember sitting there thinking, I want Data to have a command. But this is stupid. And that was a much younger me. Because I was just going, how is this command structure of this ship going to work? How is he's basically breaking the command structure on his own ship, going into a highly volatile situation which could have ended up with him in a shooting war with an ally, in a shooting war with an enemy, in a shooting war with both, which needs delicate command, which needs intricate command, and there is no admiral with staff, and the flagship which is going to be leading the operation has given away all its senior officers to go off and run other ships, so literally everything is falling on him. And whilst I realise Troy and, well, that's the ship's counsellor, and the ship's medical officer, Beverly, Crusher, and, you know, have experience, have command certification so they can sit on a bridge. I realize they do, but they have other jobs to be going and doing. And Troy, for all the things she is, and she's a ship's counselor, she's an experienced member of the crew. She's an experienced diplomatic team. She's not got enough experience in ship command operations to be assisting and taking over if they need to coordinate a multi-ship maneuver. They're going to be doing an intricate blockade where they're going to be shooting tachyon beams, basically a stream of energy, at each other, and using it as a tripwire. Their fleet will probably have to maneuver. They'll have to deal with gas clouds. All sorts of things will probably come up and issues. She's not who you leave in command for that scenario. She's not got enough experience. Running a single ship, fine, but you're coordinating a fleet this time. That's not her capability stream. That's not what she's been trained for yet. That's supposedly, realistically, what Riker's there for. But theoretically, Riker is senior enough they trust him to be the second in command of a ship which is doing this operation and then be dispatched off to other ships to command them, but not senior enough that, you know, when you're dealing with Cardassians. It just depresses me sometimes, it does. It does. Anyway, with that all said, I hope you enjoyed today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's not as long as the normal videos which come out on a Sunday. I realise this is a cover video, and this is something which I just had a quick idea of on Thursday, and I thought, I want to do that. And I actually recorded this after I did the live, and sorted out a few other things. I could have done other episodes. I did look at Admiral Paris. I considered so many. At one point I had about 24 different clips to put in, but I just thought it would end up being a 3-hour episode, and I would never get anything ready for tomorrow. Or rather today, by the time I'm finishing this. And especially by the time it's processed and uploaded and time-stamped to an extent. Not sure how I'll timestamp this one. There's no shameless book plug for me to use as a marker. I will say, though, if you like this video, and if you'd like to see more about naval history, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. And remember, when you press the subscribe button, this is the most important thing you'll probably hear today. The subscribe button on YouTube has a little bell next to it. If the bell is just an outline, that means YouTube will decide what videos you will see advertised in your list from a content creator. They will personalize it by adjusting what comes out of the from the content creator by title usually, but by other means as well, as to whether or not you might like that video or not. They'll curate it for you, and they'll only put the ones they think you'll like from that creator in your system for you to see. So they pick what videos you get to watch. If you press on it and you change it to a filled-in bell, then you get to see all the videos, and you get to decide what videos you watch with that content creators. I think that's useful. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I don't know, I didn't think this would turn into quite as ranty as it probably did, but what can I say? Star Trek winds me up sometimes, it really does. They have such good captains, and part of the reason for the Admirals being so bad is to act as a foil for the captains. I do understand that. But it also causes trouble. It makes you sort of sit there and think, how's this organisation actually survived? If this is who their admirals are, how's it survived? And I suppose in part it's supposed to be the captains, but the captains aren't coordinating the fleet. They aren't doing that. They have enough jobs running their own ship. It's like, the amount of times we talk about captains taking command of task forces and acting as a Commodore pennant in Royal Navy terms and US Navy scenarios, etc., and acting as Commodores. Doing that is always recognised to be a strain on the ship. It always has been recognised to be a strain. And it's usually a small formation. We're talking 3, 4, 5 ships. In times when they have been Commodores running far larger fleets, when they've been Commodores in name only, because the Royal Navy hasn't got round to just appointing as many Admirals as they feel like and ignoring the whole we're only supposed to have 9 Admirals scenario, they actually would promote people to Vice Commodore, and they would give the Commodores staff. And as it was, when an officer was promoted to a Commodore and was acting, they would get personnel assigned to them. They would get a staff allocation. At least some lieutenants. But usually you also had midshipmen and others, and you get writers. You have all sorts of personnel. And yes, I talk about with the age of sail, the Royal Navy often had an informal staff network going, which is always a fun thing, and various personnel involved in that. But Starfleet doesn't even do that. Starfleet doesn't even do the informal staff thing. You've got all those civilians on your ships, all those family members, who have got skills. And they're not brought into the discussions. I always remember, Chief O'Brien's wife is, Keiko, is an incredibly qualified scientist. She also does school teaching and all sorts of other things. There are times when she would probably have been useful to have a discussion with, to get information from. And there are probably countless others like that aboard these ships when you consider how large their crews and how large their complements of family members are. And that's never brought in. I realise there was part of me which long ago decided that what we're getting when we're seeing these is almost a Hollywood-esque version of Star Trek, in that the story as narrated and acted out in dramas rather than the actual events. That's how I can watch it now. I have to imagine it's just, okay, this is a Hollywoodization of events. This is, we have taken it and we have shrunk the cast, we have shrunk the number of people in it, because there's only so many people we can actually fit in on our budget. But still, it annoys me. It really does, because Star Trek has so much quality in it. It truly does. It wouldn't be hard for it to be better. It wouldn't be hard. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, and yeah, I managed to avoid getting onto the whole Admiral's bridge thing on their ships, and where an Admiral would be, and why they wouldn't be sitting in the main bridge, and why they'd have to have staff space. Yeah, a fleet flagship going around which hasn't got an Admiral's bridge, where the Admiral just sits next to the captain. Why? He's got to have a place for his staff around him, her staff around him. But of course they don't have a staff, so it doesn't matter. They just run everything out of their own heads. No wonder they're so bad. They don't have a staff. Perhaps that's the reason. They got rid of the staff, so the Admirals became terrible. Then they decided to recreate the staff by empowering a captain to become adjutant. And suddenly all the godly powers of staff were subsumed into one person who works with every admiral, which is why they are so important and so useful. They're their real brain. No. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and take care.